Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gemma Kello. I am the Communications Manager for Brumbreeze. I am joined today by Gareth Wood, who's a Senior Clean Air Zone Officer, and we will talk you through how the Clean Air Zone is going to work and the support that's available. I'm going to give it just a couple of moments to wait for any late joiners. If in the meantime, though, those of you who have joined could confirm in the chat box, the Q&A box on the right-hand side, that you can hear me okay, just so I know there's no problems with the technical equipment, that would be great. So if you could just like the comment in the chat box if you can hear me, that would be fantastic, and we'll get underway very shortly. Fantastic, we've had confirmation. So this webinar is being recorded, and we will circulate a link to this recording afterwards so that you can share with family, friends, colleagues, etc. So without further ado, we'll get started now on the presentation. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that okay. So Birmingham's Clean Air Zone is being introduced because poor air quality has been declared a national health emergency. Every year, between 28 and 36,000 people across the UK die from conditions linked to poor air quality, including cancer, heart disease and lung disease. And of that number, up to 900 people every single year are dying in Birmingham from those conditions. I won't go through all the figures on screen, but I do think it's worth pointing out that children are most adversely affected because they are smaller and closer to the ground and closer to those exhaust fumes that are more concentrate. They inhale 3 times as much air pollution than we do as adults, which has a significant impact on their development, particularly their lung function. So prior to COVID taking hold, we undertook some research in Birmingham city centre, and we ascertained that 50% of all journeys into the city centre were being undertaken by private car. And of those journeys, 250,000 of them every day were for less than 1 mile. So that's a 20-minute walk, 10-minute cycle ride, etc. So what the Clean Air Zone is looking to do in the first instance is to deter high polluting vehicles from entering the city centre, but secondly, get people who are taking those short journeys to consider alternative forms of transport, such as walking, cycling or public transport. So the Clean Air Zone is being introduced on the 1st of June this year. It is the second Clean Air Zone outside of London to be being introduced. Bath went first last month, we are next. And it's important to stress that Clean Air Zones are being introduced to cities across the UK. They are government mandated and they are being introduced to tackle those poor air quality levels that I was discussing earlier. It's important to stress that a Clean Air Zone is not the same as a congestion charge. A congestion charge will charge every single vehicle to pass through a particular area, whereas a Clean Air Zone will only charge the most high polluting vehicles. We estimate that in Birmingham, that will be about 1 in 4 vehicles that are subject to the charge. Each council, local authority, sets the boundaries for their Clean Air Zone and decides what category of zone they want to implement. In Birmingham, we've opted for a category D, so that means that all high polluting buses, taxis, lorries, vans and private cars will be subject to the daily charge from the 1st of June. So on screen, you can see the blue area. Sorry, I'm just getting a bit of feedback. There we go. So the Clean Air Zone is everywhere that you see on screen that is the blue area within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. So come the 1st of June, if you're in a compliant vehicle that meets the emission standards, you do not need to take any action. However, if you are in a high polluting vehicle, you can drive around the A4540 Middleway, no problem. But the second you enter the blue area, there'll be ANPR cameras scattered around. And if you're in a non-compliant vehicle, you will be subject to daily charges.
Hi, Gemma, sorry, 1 second. I think the slides aren't changing. I think it needs to go to slideshow. At least that's on my screen.
Apologies, bear with me. Can you see that now?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Gareth. So yes, if you're in a non-compliant vehicle from the 1st of June and you drive in that blue area on screen, you'll be subject to the daily charge. That daily charge is £8 a day for cars, taxis and vans, and £50 a day for HGVs, coaches and buses. A day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. And during that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave the zone as many times as you want for a single charge. However, if you drive in at 10 p.m, leave at 3 a.m, and cross that midnight threshold, you will be subject to 2 charges. You'll need to make payment either online or over the phone using the government payment system. And you have a 13-day payment window. So you must pay either 6 days before the day of your visit, the day of your visit, or 6 days afterwards. If you do not pay within that time frame, you'll be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120, reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. It's really important to note that you won't receive an alert to say you've entered the zone and payment is due. You won't receive a text or an email. The onus is on you as a driver to know that you've entered, and on you as a driver to make the payment within that allocated time frame. We do have 300 signs that have been installed on the approach and boundary of the zone to warn you that you're entering, but that is the only warning that you will get, which is why we're doing these webinars, to make people aware so they know what to look for. So the big question is, will I be charged? What vehicles are compliant? So on screen, you can see a list of vehicles here that will not be subject to the charge. And like I say, if you're not subject to the charge, you do not need to take any action. So you can check your V5C for this information, and if you have a Euro 4 standard or better petrol vehicle, a Euro 6 diesel or better, gas Euro 6, fully electric, fully hydrogen fuel cell, or a hybrid electric subject to those Euro 4 petrol, Euro 6 diesel standards, you will not be subject to the charges. The easiest way to check, though, is to go onto the Brumbury's website, where you can click a link to the government vehicle checker and input your vehicle registration details, and that will tell you whether or not you're subject to the charge. As a guidance, and I must stress this is a guidance, it is the Euro standard that we're interested in. Most petrol vehicles came into circulation from 2006 onwards at a Euro 4 standard, and most diesel vehicles at Euro 6 came into circulation from September 2015 onwards. But like I say, it is the emission standard and not the date that we're looking for, and the easiest thing to do is to go via the Brumbury's website and use the government vehicle checker. Now, despite media reports, it is not our intention to make money from the scheme. If we make no money from the Clean Air Zone, then that's fantastic, because it means we've achieved our objective. There are no high polluting vehicles passing through the city centre, and therefore air quality levels will improve. However, we do know that particularly in the early days, we will be making some money from this. So we have to reinvest that money in transport related projects and policies. It cannot be used to support the council's general budget and fund things such as bin collections or repairs to the floozy and the jacuzzi. So some of the options that have been identified so far to use that money have been implementing control parking zones on the boundary of the Clean Air Zone around the A4540 Middleway. And that's to stop people from parking their cars on the outside and walking in and causing problems for residents. We are also supporting or providing funding for a hydrogen bus pilot scheme for 20 buses that will come into effect later this year. And we're also funding city centre pedestrianisation improvements and an enhanced programme of active and sustainable travel, such as cycle lanes, so that walking and cycling become more appealing and safer to do so without you having to navigate busy lanes of traffic. And that in particular is important for those journeys I referenced earlier that are for less than 1 mile. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Gareth, and he's going to talk through some of the support that's available. And then if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and we will answer them at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gemma, and thank you for those attending today for making some time during your day in order to drop in and hear a little bit more about Birmingham's incoming Clean Air Zone. So moving on with the slides and into this part of the presentation, Gemma's already discussed the background and general overview of the Clean Air Zone. In order to aid people into obtaining compliance, either via financial support or exemptions, we have brought in a wide range of support. This slide here gives you a glimpse of what we refer to as our residential exemptions and our worker or employee within the clean air zone exemptions. So these are what is also referred to by us as short-term exemptions, as there are some that we'll come to shortly that are ongoing exemptions and are also national exemptions. So for the purpose of Birmingham's clean air zone, if, for instance, you're a resident within the clean air zone and you own a non-compliant vehicle, you are entitled to apply for a residential exemption, which would last for 2 years from the launch date of the clean air zone, effectively meaning that from the 1st of June this year up until the 1st of June in 2023, you would not face any charges for use of a non-compliant vehicle as long as you're a resident within the zone. Additionally, there is a similar process for workers within the zone. So if you meet the criteria there, you work within the clean air zone, you earn less than £30,000 per year or no more than that, and you work a minimum of 18 hours per week, you can access a worker exemption, which would last for 12 months from the launch of the clean air zone, meaning that you would be able to bring your non-compliant vehicle into work and face no daily charges. We'll come to some additional support for workers within the clean air zone shortly, some financial support, but additionally you'll see beneath that we also have exemptions for commercial vehicles registered within the clean air zone. So businesses that have vehicles registered within the clean air zone can apply for a commercial exemption again, which is for 1 year. And they also may be able to access financial support depending on the business themselves. And additionally, there we have what are known, well, what we refer to here as visitors to hospitals, effectively to some of the medical centres within the clean air zone, including the Children's Hospital. Visitors with non-compliant vehicles to those will be able to access a voucher, which they can then subsequently enter online, that negates any potential charge for them using their non-compliant vehicle in order to visit a medical centre, which of course we're mindful is something that can potentially be out of their hands, particularly in the case of having to visit the hospital, which might require them to do so under emergency circumstances. Next slide, please, Gemma. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to what I briefly mentioned there. So we have our temporary exemptions, which we just looked at there, and then we have ongoing exemptions. So in general, these are national exemptions, but the vehicle types here that are listed within the bubbles would mean that they don't incur any charges, and that's an indefinite instance. So you'll see, without going through all of them, motorcycles are non-chargeable. Vehicles with disabled or disabled passenger tax class, which relates to what's known as tax class 85, those vehicles would face no charges. And additionally, we have vehicles here which come under the remit of community and school transport. These are vehicles that, for the purpose of Birmingham's assertion of them, would be section 19 or 22, and these are generally, as a rule, vehicles used for not-for-profit purposes for transportation, hence the reason that it tends to be school and community transport. Additionally to that, we have some broader categories here: show vehicles, specialist or special vehicles, and historic vehicles. Special vehicles, things along the lines of construction vehicles, things like cranes, diggers and tractors and things of that nature, that cannot easily be amended to vehicles of the emission types that we spoke about, or Gemma spoke about earlier in the presentation. Next slide, please, Gemma. So moving on from the exemptions, I did briefly touch earlier on as an example about the worker financial support. So we have a fund of cumulatively £35 million, which is divisible by the sections on the right hand side. So a scrappage and mobility scheme that relates to the workers within the clean air zone, £10 million towards what are known as SMEs, small and medium enterprises, businesses applicable within the region for this level of support, and £15 million to assist the taxi industry, so taxis licensed to Birmingham, in order to help them achieve compliance either via upgrades or new new vehicles completely. With regards to what's listed there as the scrappage scheme, which affects workers within the clean air zone, in general, in its broadest sense, there is an amount of up to £2,000 available to each of the qualifying workers. So effectively, if you meet the criteria for a worker exemption, you may meet the criteria for the scrappage scheme, depending on the length of ownership of your vehicle. If you do, you can scrap your existing non-compliant vehicle via and then obtain £2,000 or up to £2,000 from our preferred scrappage partner, Motorpoint, in order to put that money towards the purchase of a new vehicle. How that money is used by successful applicants at Motorpoint will be determined entirely by them. For instance, it can be a lump sum to go towards the outright purchase of a vehicle. It could be used towards finance of a vehicle via Motorpoint. There are numerous options, and additionally to that, there will be mobility credits. So the same amount of money per successful applicant towards public transport mobility via a relatively like a Swift card process, and potentially also for a bike rental scheme as well. So that's just an example of the funding that follows on from the exemption programme in order to aid Birmingham businesses, workers and citizens to obtain compliance. Thanks, Gemma. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here we've got a bit of a snapshot of Birmingham's transport plan. The clean air zone itself really is one aspect of what's going to be a significant and broader transport plan, which is available to see the proposed plan via Birmingham City Council's website. It's a very large programme, which is in keeping with the national plans towards achieving carbon neutrality, and also for making our city a far more attractive, safer and greener environment for people to travel into and to use and to work within. We'll see here the categories that probably will come up and be seen more regularly as a lot of the schemes fall into these definitions over the coming months and years. Reallocation of road space for the pedestrian, for blue route cycle lanes to enable active transport, and for people to feel safer and more secure in doing that. And everything, of course, we'll do, and every part of this is geared towards tackling the climate change emergency or environmental emergency that we're aware of. Secondly, we're looking at transforming the city centre, and again, this follows very much the same route of making the city centre a safer, easier, more enjoyable place to visit, and that includes the continued improvement of public transportation. Our schemes, of course, including the clean air zone, geared towards a higher usage of certain public transportation, and of course making that a more attractive prospect for people to be able to traverse the city in a faster, more economical way than in their vehicle. And so that's an important part. And of course, we come on to the prioritising of active travel, which I mentioned at the beginning there when we spoke about reallocation of road space. It aids people's health, well-being, to be able to be more active in terms of how they travel, in terms of their transport, either that be by cycling or a mixture of pedestrianisation and the utilisation of improved public transport. It's something that the city will become more developed and geared towards. And additionally, what we're aware of within that is the final section there about managing demand. So ensuring that the processes that we put in place have end results that manage the demand of traffic, but also manage the demand of the commuter or the traveller or the person moving through the city themselves, but with a mind to ensuring that we don't move the problem out of the city centre to outskirts, so that we are introducing schemes like resident permit parking on the areas that will surround the clean air zone, is just by one example, which will limit the amount of people who may potentially think that they can use a non-compliant vehicle, for instance, park on the outskirts, which then creates congestion in those neighbourhoods and regions, which we don't want to happen at all. Thanks, Gemma. Yeah, so yeah, this slide adds more detail to what I mentioned as the clean air zone as one of the aspects as an enabler of change. As I'd said earlier on, that the nation itself has a commitment now to achieve carbon neutrality. Broadly, I think the date that the nation is looking at achieving this around 2050. We would like to become net zero carbon in Birmingham by 2030, which is part of our route to zero. In order to do this, we do need to be a leader, I think, within the city, but nationally, and us being the first local authority to launch what's known as a Category D clean air zone puts us very much in that position, and means an overall commitment from all of us within the city. It will lead to greater change, and towards the greener, more sustainable future that we want. Along with that, there are additional programs supported by the Clean Air Zone team, and these include, as you can see here, without just reading them straight off, an expansion of vehicle charging points. So to add to that, we're looking at putting in around 200 new charge points throughout the city to encourage the use of electric vehicles. Along with that, we're going to purchase 50 electric hackney carriages, which will be available to rent to licensed taxi drivers to Birmingham, so they'll be able to use all electric taxis. And of course, in order to aid the convenience for that, we need more charge points. So the amount that we put in will take us to being one of the cities, or a city with some of the highest amounts of charge points nationally. And the purchase of the hydrogen buses again brings us back to the encouragement of development of public transportation, making that more attractive, more usable, and of course a greener, healthier option. Don't want to replace high emitting vehicles, high emitting cars with high emitting buses. So of course what we're trying to do here is ensure that everything ties together and fundamentally leads to the target that we have. Next slide, please, Gemma. Yeah, and here we reached the end of the presentation, as it were. So there's some contact details here. We'll get to the point now, of course, where if anybody does have any questions, by all means, we'd be very, very happy to answer them now. But as you can see from the contact details on the slide, it's not prohibited to be able to ask questions. We're available in any number of ways. Most directly, you can reach us at our email address at cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk. We normally respond within 2 working days, and often, depending on volumes, we can get back to you quicker than that. So if you do have any questions that occur after the fact, after the course of this webinar today, then by all means get straight to us, and we will get back to you presently. And thanks, Gemma's put a link in here. So yeah, our website, just to kind of perhaps reiterate what we briefly touched upon earlier on, is really the kind of one-stop shop for all of the information, application processes and criteria for the exemptions, support, the overview of the clean air zone. There's an interactive map. We've got links on there to live pollution monitoring, which you can see on there, and you can go into that and have a look at the node monitoring in parts of the city centre. Every scheme that we have is available on there, as is the registration possibility for expressing an interest in regular updates about the clean air zones. You can effectively sign up to our newsletter, sign up for updates, which would get you any new information, such as when our scrappage scheme launches, as soon as we have it. So it may well be something that you would like to do thereafter. So if anybody has any questions, or if Gemma has anything to add, I shall quieten.
I think just at this point, thank you all for attending, as Gareth said. We would encourage you to share a link to this recording with as many friends and family and colleagues as possible. As we mentioned earlier, this is not our intention to make money from this clean air zone. It is about improving air quality, and we want people to be prepared and to understand, and come the 1st of June, if they do need to pay, know that they need to pay, and either choose to pay within the timeframes or find alternative ways of travelling through Birmingham city centre. So please help us to make as many people as possible as aware of this as you can. We'll go on quiet now for a minute or two to see if there's any questions. So I make it 12:26. We'll give it to 12:27, see if any questions come in, and if not, then we will end the webinar. Thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like we've got any questions, so I will close the webinar. Thank you on behalf of myself and Gareth for attending. Please check out the website if there's anything you're not sure about. After going on the website, please do email us. The important thing is it's not a congestion charge. It's not every vehicle, it's about 1 in 4. If your vehicle is compliant, you do not need to take any action. Please also check the difference between a blue badge and tax class A45, disabled passenger tax class. Blue badge holders are not automatically exempt. However, the disabled passenger tax class is, and you may be able to apply for that if you're in receipt of certain benefits. So please check out the website, get in touch if you have any questions, and thank you very much for joining us today. Take care and stay safe.